watch Scanners in 4K, and I'm hoping to develop a bit of a telepathy to get my viewers to go ahead and like this video. Let me know if it works. You can do so by liking this video, and if you would do that and subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Woo! Anyway, so I hope that worked. Second Sight Films has recently released two very impressive limited edition sets of early David Cronenberg films from the late 70s and 80s. The first one was The Brood, which I've already covered in another review. You can check out that review on my channel. But the one we're here to talk about today is Scanners from 1981. It is a science fiction kind of horror film. And so these two very impressive limited edition sets have been put out by Second Sight Film. Second Sight Film is a UK company. There is a 4K here with the film and the Blu-ray as well. The Blu-ray I couldn't play in my player because it's region B locked, and I have a region A player. The 4K isn't region locked, so you should be able to watch it on any 4K player. Now, Scanners is the film that put David Cronenberg on the map. It does have some body horror in here with some exploding heads. These the Scanners' abilities are both telepathic and telekinetic, where they can, with telekinesis, they can move objects or even make heads explode if they really try hard enough. But with the telepathy, they can make people, it can change people's minds or make them do certain things. Like they could do this, and then the people are like, "Oh shit." Just can make them back off. So it's fairly impressive powers that the Scanners have. And during the course of the movie, it's kind of revealed where these powers come from. I'm not going to necessarily reveal that here. It's not like a big surprise, but I will say that the main character has scanner abilities, and there's apparently a lot of other people who have had scanner abilities in the past. They've kind of been, there's not that many left, and they were born from these women who took these drugs while they were pregnant, and that's kind of what caused them to have these scanner babies. There is a tech conglomerate who is trying to collect these scanners and trying to use their abilities for maybe nefarious purposes. The main character, Cameron Vale, played by Stephen Lack, he starts out as kind of a homeless guy. He doesn't realize he has these abilities, but when he's hanging out in the mall, which is a pretty cool scene. It kind of starts off in this kind of mall scenario scene. He's walking through the mall, and he sees a hot dog, a half uneaten hot dog on the table. He's like going to snag that thing and eat it. Some women see him, and then they start thinking. That's another thing that they can do. They can read people's minds, so they can hear their thoughts. So they hear these two women over there talking shit about him, and then he uses his scanner's abilities to make one of the ladies start to kind of convulse, and I guess probably borderline have a heart attack. I don't think he kills her there, but then there's the two guys there who are just wearing trench coats hanging out in the mall, like they typically would do, I guess. But then they see him doing that, and they realize that he's a scanner. They've been looking for scanners, and they get him, and they bring him back to the lab. So there he meets seemingly friendly Dr. Paul Ruth, played by Patrick McGoohan. Patrick McGoohan, I recognized him, and I couldn't quite place it, but he was the original star on the Prisoner show. He was the guy who played the main character on the Prisoner show. So he goes to this guy who is somewhat friendly, but there may be a shady part of his past that I'm not going to necessarily get into at this point. But Patrick McGoohan, he plays this thing very straight and very convincing, and so he turns in a very fine performance. Where most of the performances here have different layers to them. Meanwhile, there is another scanner who seems to be the evil scanner. He's played by Michael Ironside, as you see him here on the cover. And so what's probably one of the more famous scenes from this film. He's in this seminar. There's another guy who's running the seminar, and he's like he's got scanner abilities, and he's trying to show off these abilities or let people see what he can do. And he calls up a volunteer, and it just happens to be Michael Ironside's character, Daryl Revick. And Daryl Revick comes up to the stage, and then as he starts to trying to scan Revick does his scanner's ability. He's like, and then he all of a sudden makes the guy's head explode, and it looks friggin' fantastic. And I think that's the scene there that kind of got people really thinking about this movie being, holy shit, he just made that guy's head explode. But it's a fairly early scene that happens, and nothing that awesome ever happens again in the movie. So that's one thing about this film. If you're thinking that it's going to be like a whole shitload of cool, like body horror explosions. There's not that many. Now there's some near the end, but there's not like a lot. There's a lot of there's a lot of like, I guess, investigative work by the main character trying to understand where he's coming from, and a lot of him trying to track down Revik and him trying to investigate. So there's a big investigative part, and there's some chase scenes, and it is like, I guess it's not as exciting as you might think it is. It does kind of have a little bit of a deliberate pace, more character driven for the most part of the film, trying to understand these abilities and where they've come from. But they're not to say that it's not entertaining to watch. I'm just saying it's not going to be like a full on gore fest with lots of fun horror effects going on throughout the whole film. Not to say there's not some here and there, but it's not like boom boom boom. It's more like bam, your head explodes, and then wait a little bit, something more happens, and nothing ever happens as much as that. Scanners was followed by 2 sequels. They weren't directed by David Cronenberg, Scanners 2 and Scanners 3, and also had a spin-off films like Scanner Cop and Scanner Cop 2. Now these are Vinegar Syndrome releases, and they're pretty well done. Scanner Cop's kind of an interesting concept where he's a cop with scanner abilities, and so I guess that kind of explains itself, right? Scanner Cop, boom. Well, I don't think any heads really go boom, but they usually don't explode all the way. It's more like you don't have to kill. I mean, you don't have to make someone's head fully explode to kill them. You can make their brain pop inside their head, and that's it. But I guess for a dramatic effect, that head does explode pretty early on, and that's quite an awesome scene. Before I talk about the transfer, which I'm about to do, and then I'm going to crack open this here limited edition release, we're going to take a look at the contents. I do want to mention the performances a little bit more. I want to talk about Michael Ironside specifically. His part isn't that as big as you would think, but he does have a very awesome scene near the end and a very awesome scene near the beginning, and he's kind of sprinkled throughout the film. There was originally supposed to be there is another antagonist, like a guy who comes into the computer tech company, and he's kind of working for Ironside's character, but he's kind of that guy was originally supposed to be the main heavy, but he's kind of a secondary heavy in this one. But as they were shooting it, David Cronenberg liked the idea of Michael Ironside's character and his connection to the main character more, so he kind of it made him the main villain. Now he is in it enough. I think that the last time I watched this, I was thinking he wasn't in it enough. But it could have used a little bit more of him, maybe. But he puts in a very intense performance and very iconic. Stephen Lack, who plays the main character, Cameron Vell, he has a very, very nice presence on camera. And when you're watching the film, you're like, I wonder why he didn't do a whole bunch more. Now, he did do a little bit more stuff, but not a whole lot more. And there is interviews with Michael Ironside and Stephen Lack on this special edition, and they both talk. They tell different stories. Like Michael Ironside was very impressed with David Cronenberg. Stephen Lack was probably not as much so as Michael Ironside. Michael Ironside's like, he is one of the best directors I've ever worked with. Where Stephen Lack's like, he's like, he didn't really give me much direction. He would just give me like basic direction, like walk there or walk, whatnot. So he wasn't as impressed as Michael Ironside was with David Cronenberg. But Stephen Lack's performance here is quite good, but the reason why he didn't do more films, according to his interview on the disc, well, he says that this was a very big movie when it came out. It was like #1 at the box office, I think, for a weekend or so. And the trailers were all over the place. And he said he felt when he went places like people recognized him, and he didn't like that. So he wanted to kind of get out of the limelight, and he started doing art instead of like paintings. And he does paintings. He got like an art shop and things of that nature. So he wanted to get out of this and more into that because he didn't like the feeling of not having his privacy, which is understandable. So let's talk about the 4K transfer. This film, shot in 1981, shot on film. It has a very film-like quality to it. There is a lot of grain. It wasn't distracting to me. And also, it's nice to see it because they didn't do a lot of cleanup. And this does have an HDR. The HDR looks friggin' fantastic here. Even though you see that grain, it might, if you don't like grain, this may be like, get that grain out of here. Scrub that shit out. But it's not scrubbed out. It's there, and the textures of the faces, you see this, especially on close-ups, and the textures of the faces and things of that nature. You see all that so well, and the the HDR grading, and it really brings out the coloring of the skin tones. Now the skin tones look very natural throughout, except of course when the heads are exploding and things are popping out of people's faces because they're getting messed up by the telekinesis of the scanners. But the black levels look natural here. I didn't see a lot of murkiness. Now there is some exterior nights in some parts of the film, and maybe a little bit more grain in those areas. But even the blacks there didn't have like a shade of murkiness to them. They look fairly dark, and they look fairly dark and black. The clothing, especially this kind of period from late 70s, early 80s clothing, the textures all look very nice, and everything, for the most part, is very sharp. There's, occasionally you'll get a little soft focus here and there. That was from just when it was being shot and the movement, but mostly everything looks very sharp, and it looks like, I think it looks very, like I was saying before, it looks very organic and very pleasing to the eyes, maybe, but it does have a bit of darkness to it, as far as, not like darkness as far as just the design. I think by design it kind of goes that way, as far as the colors of this time period. When you're in the mall, or when you're in, say, a office building, a lot of it is like browns and stuff kind of bleed through. You kind of get that kind of brown like color in some scenes, depending on where you're at. And really, when you're outside, everything looks very natural. In the daylight, the skin tones look like they should. There's a lot of depth of field. I think this is shot very well, and in the set design and just the direction of the film, it's all very, very well done. So let's go ahead and break open this thing, shall we? So we got a very impressive slip box, this is traditional, or this is the second Sight films I've gotten have all had this, at least the limited edition sets. They do a very awesome job of their releases. There's a booklet in here. Here's the front of it. So he goes to this an artist who has a scanner abilities, and who that actor is actually in The Brood as well, but he has this is part of his art that's in his place, and it's in there, and they go inside of it. It's like a little cubby hole in there. We'll take a little bit more look at this booklet in just a second. There's some cards. All right, so here's the cover to this one, with Michael Ironside and Stephen Lack on it. So this is the shot where the guy's head explodes. That's fantastic. These are good cards. Here's one with Michael Ironside and Patrick McGoohan, his character, Dr. Paul Ruth. And here is Stephen Lack with Jennifer O'Neill as Kim Oberst. Now, I didn't talk about Kim Oberst before. Now, the actress is top billed in this film. She doesn't appear in the movie until about 40 minutes into it, but she has a big part from there until the end. But she's pretty good. She's another scanner, and they end up teaming up and trying to figure out what's going on with this Ravenek killing the other scanners, and they kind of team up and do stuff in the film. This is the same thing I was showing you before, and here's another odd. This is the last card here. Other than the cards, here's the movie itself. The second sites have a little bit of a cardboard thing, so same artwork from the cards that we've seen. All right, and on the inside we have two discs. We have a 4K and a Blu-ray. We have Michael Ironside on one and Stephen Lack on the other. Very appropriate. And here's the book. I'm not going to go through a lot of this book, but they have pictures throughout. They have a lot of essays of people talking about the film. Like, for instance, they have Live Long Scanners is one essay, Mind-Blowing Horror is another, Brain Matter, celebrating the groundbreaking special effects of David Cronenberg's Scanners. Now, the thing about the special effects here, that the head explosion is groundbreaking for sure, but then later on, there's another scanner between the main two guys. They have a scanner showdown, and it's pretty cool, and then their faces start doing all this crazy stuff, and apparently Dick Smith, they have him come. They did some reshoots. They shot it one way and it wasn't good enough. They had him come in, and he's like the one that kind of did all the really awesome makeup for that last sequence. All right, let's go ahead and rate the film. I'm going to rate this on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. Whew. So this film, now this is a tough one, but I'm gonna give it 4 stars. It is really weird and it is occasionally incoherent. It's not as exciting as you would think it would be, but it is iconic, and this is what kind of brought David Cronenberg to the mainstream, and it is very well done, and it actually is fairly thought-provoking. As far as Second Sight films on their release here, now this is extremely thick. I think there is also an available like a standard edition, which if you don't want your media to be this thick, if you don't have enough shelf space for it, or you don't want to pay the extra money for it, I think you can get a standard edition of this, which would have the very awesome 4K transfer. I'm going to give them 4.5 stars for this release. They did a terrific job, like they typically do, just like they did with The Brood. These are very, very amazing Second Sight releases. If you do me a favor and go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel, I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching. Like this video. Hope that worked.